Hey everybody, Kaysha here. So today I want to talk to you a little bit real quick about Tina Peters' case. So on April 9th, 2024, myself, Maureen Steele, and Ann Vandersteel all went into the state of Colorado to file a petition for redress of grievances. Tina Peters actually also signed this petition. In fact, she actually had exculpatory evidence related to the election fraud that was outlined in the petition that was not allowed to go into the court. The petition was not brought to the floor, and as a result, Tina Peters was unlawfully imprisoned. My father, Dale Richardson, was actually tortured in the state of Colorado to suppress his evidence of treason against the United States, which was based on improper engineering controls which allowed for the spread of the COVID-19 virus, which was likewise created at Wuhan by Peter Daszak and the EcoHealth Alliance with the pathogen, which were handed over to the Chinese by the Winnipeg Biolabs. This created the circumstances for widespread election fraud. My father Dale and I are friends of Tina Peters, who has been politically persecuted for standing up for the liberty of all Americans. And she, as a sister in Christ, has been persecuted like I have for standing up for the liberty of all people. In the state of Colorado, women and Christians are being persecuted on monumental levels, and I'm calling for everyone to stand up for Tina Peters in every way possible, including using the Karis Project Action Plan to compel the state government to put the petition for redress of grievance to the floor so that Tina Peters can petition before the state house that belongs to the people. And if Colorado continues to deny a Republican form of government, we will implore that Congress and President Donald J. Trump initiate Article 4, Section 4 of the United States Constitution, which guarantees a Republican form of government, to the states, and use that just power to intervene and provide what the Constitution has ordained. The time is upon us to come together and stand united as people, and let the world know that we stand together to preserve this perfect union for all Americans and our posterity. That is why, y'all already know, I'm going to leave you with my favorite quote. The greatest want of the world is the want of men. Men who cannot be bought or sold. Men who in their inmost souls are true and honest. Men who do not fear to call sin by its right name. Men whose conscience is as true to duty as needle to the pole. Men who will stand for the right, though the heavens may fall. Ciao, guys.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Karis Project podcast. Today we have with us Chris Varga, who is running for the PVC. He has a background in real estate and a number of other things. We'll get you to kind of introduce yourself to our audience, and of course, my daughter, the host.
Hi, everybody, and Dale, Kaysha, thanks for having me on today. I really appreciate it. Yes, my name is Chris Varga. I am the People's Party of Canada candidate for Vancouver Centre, downtown Vancouver. And I love this city. I've been here for many years. I have seen what's been happening to this city over time. We've had problems with housing, jobs, immigration, and nobody seems to be talking about it here. So after many years of living here and working in the city, working with people, I'm engaged as well, so I'm trying to start a family soon here. I just decided it's time to, rather than wait for the change, make it happen yourself.
Okay, well, I mean, that's a good reason. I think we need more people that are willing to do that, that are coming in to run for politics, not because they want to be a career politician, but because they actually have a desire to make changes. Like, I get that. I ran for the Buffalo Party in Saskatchewan in the last election because I was fed up with what was going on. So you're running in Vancouver. Have you been in BC for a long time?
Yeah, so I probably moved to BC probably back in 2014. So I've been here about 11 years now.
Okay, where were you before that previously?
Well, I went to high school in the States. I was initially born in Mississauga, but my dad was a winemaker, so we moved to California for work there. So most of my childhood was spent in California. We had Canadian roots. We did visit very often. It's just that's where I went to high school. So eventually, after high graduation for college, I moved up to Vancouver, and my whole family did actually. Father unfortunately passed away, but at that point, we started spreading our roots on the Vancouver Island. I moved to Vancouver, and I met my future fiance, and yeah, I've just been here ever since. And I've always loved the city. I've always loved the atmosphere and what it could offer, and I think it's probably one of the best cities in Canada.
Yeah, I mean, I used to live in Vancouver. That was quite a
Yeah,
long time ago.
yeah,
But one of the things that I noticed was the well, it was unaffordable then, and it's like unaffordable for most people now with
yeah.
the
That's
extreme cost of living. Which I
yeah.
mean, if before, I mean before the '80s, it wasn't nowhere anywhere near as bad, and
Mhm.
so forth. So
I mean, not even 10 years ago was this bad. I remember. So I'm 31, going on 32 soon. And when I was in college in my early 20s, I could still go to university while having a part-time job, and I worked at just your basic teenage, like, young person job at retail. I could manage a part-time job while also paying for my bills and renting a apartment, whether it be with roommates or just a house with other people. But it was still a livable space at the time. Compared to now, I can't even imagine what the kids are going through now, because a lot of them, they can't. They're either basically putting five of them in one room, or they're staying at their parents'. There's no opportunity after graduation. It's been brutal. And like I said, even 10 years ago, the rents, for an apartment in Vancouver, it's increased about, I don't even know the number, but it's increased tenfold. It's not affordable, even realistically, even.
yeah, yeah. I mean, like when I was living in Vancouver years ago, I mean, a basement suite in East Vancouver out by Renfrew, that was like $1,000 a month, right? And you know, I mean, I lived in Kitsilano, and it was like crazy expensive. Now I look at what people are paying now, and I'm like, that's absolutely absurd. And you're getting a closet, and a lot of this, like, I mean, when I was out there, there was, you know, we had a lot. There was a lot of the houses that were empty on Southwest Marine Drive that were being bought by foreigners and so
Yeah,
forth. And this is what helped drive up the real estate market, because I remember they would be empty houses, or they'd have people living in on welfare in $1 million houses
yeah,
because somebody else outside of the country were buying them and driving up the market. And so there was a they created a an artificially higher demand than there was, which drove the market through the roof. So what are the types of things that you do for, like, for example, the foreign ability to buy, like, foreign companies or people or whatnot to come in and buy property here in Canada? What is there any stance on that the PBC would do if elected?
I'm sorry, you cut out in the last part
I
there. What
said,
was
is
the?
there any stance that the PBC has that would cut down all of this foreign, foreigners buying up stuff here in Canada?
Well, I think the initial problem we have is a lot of the quote unquote foreigner investment that we're getting is coming from one country, and it started from one country, that was China. And Trudeau decided to get in bed with China and give them a lot more leeway when it comes to Canadian housing and Canadian programs. Um, in regards to stats, I can't give any off the top of my head, but I do know that that is what started this problem with the increase in housing prices and the empty homes. For example, with the empty homes tax on top of that too, it's just been unchecked regulation from foreign investment. And in regards to how we can fix that, obviously we need to. I think there's only one country we really need to regulate in that regard. Uh, However, in regards to how do we fix the housing, it all starts with immigration. Uh, the first and foremost, because as soon as we get that under control, you'll find people will be able to live in homes again, and jobs will be more sustainable.
Yeah, I agree that there needs to be a brakes put on the immigration. There needs to be the brakes put on with the foreign control, especially coming from China. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I we watched. I mean, federally, they talked about the foreign influence, and like CSIS was like,
Yeah.
yes, there is foreign control, and it goes way back. He was talking all the way back to Mulrooney. So you're looking at a whole succession of foreign influence coming from China, but they're like, well, we can't tell you about it. What do you mean you can't tell us about it?
Yeah.
Another
So the
country is controlling us, and we can't know. Go ahead.
Yeah. And we've already seen with the whole security breach that happened with the MP officials in both parties, actually, liberal and conservative, have ties to foreign foreign corporations and foreign countries. So they're benefiting them instead of their own people.
Well, and then this comes up to like the whole issue again. Then you look at what happened like during COVID, for example, and we all knew about the transfer of the biological weapons in Winnipeg, and then we find out that they were putting it together with the Americans and so forth, and the
Mhm.
RCMP were actually hindered from proceeding with that investigation, giving like a hostile country pathogens that ended up getting released. So
Mhm.
what is the PPC going to do like with this federally? Because when you see that these things are going over to China and you've got Chinese control on all the major parties in Canada, I mean, how do you expect to get impartiality? What are they going to do to fix that issue there? So that
To
we get
fix the issue of foreign interference.
yeah, so that law enforcement can do their jobs.
Well, like I said, it all starts. My personal opinion is the PPC itself is very much against foreign interference, and also we got to go back to mass migration. The problem is the country itself has to close its doors, and we got to kick the people out that don't belong here. It starts with that, and then we got to control the country itself because we have too many people working inside a government that have other special interests. It starts with the MPs. So we got to look at the MPs that are actually in cahoots with other countries like China, India, and we got to get rid of them. We can't have them work in our government anymore. That's how we have to find. We have to get into the mindset that Canada and its government has to work for Canadians first. I don't know this deep down into the specifics of how we can go into that, but once we get into the parliament and when we can get some more footing in the government, that's how it starts. We have to slowly break it down because it's become such a cesspool of I just people who are just so corrupted and they don't care. They're out for their special interests.
Y- yes, and we see this happening over and over again. And I mean, even in you saw it in pretty much every province in BC and so forth. And we look at for example, the level of corruption, like the Cullen Commission, that they talked about how the RCMP were getting their funding cut to deal with things like money laundering and so forth, which is again tied to foreign interference, right?
Yeah.
Real like th- this is a huge problem, right? Because we can't go with the status quo with the government that is controlled by foreign people, and then we had the report from the foreign interference report that went into Parliament, and CSIS is like, well, we need to ask the government Parliament for permission or the powers to investigate the foreign interference from the people who
hmm
are controlled by foreigners.
hmm Now that's why a company like what Elon started with Doge, it's not a bad idea because you can't have the government investigate itself. It's just going to find that there's nothing wrong, right? It's very convenient that way. So if there's so many. We also have problems with the cartel that are bringing up the fentanyl prices across the border here. And that's really what Trump's referring to when he's threatening these tariffs. He just wants Canada to fix itself. And if we're not willing to do that, then of course he's no wonder he'd rather we be the 51st state because he doesn't want a northern border that has all these problems from China, India, Mexico, you name it. And we're just basically opening our doors and allowing all this drugs and violence to come in here free.
Yes, people have to realize that it's not just Trump being like glib or just trying to you know, troll people. Canada is a serious problem. A lot of Canadians don't realize that because there's a lot of corruption. There's like organized crime like nobody's business. They even, I
Oh
mean, this was in a report that I looked at. I can't think of it at the top of my head, but they talked about how organized crime is moving into every level of Canadian politics.
yeah,
Every level. And if you sit down and you have criminals in the every level of politics, that means you're going to have criminals in the judiciary.
yeah,
And I I've had conversation with an RCMP who said he got tired of
yeah,
preparing a case, have all the evidence lay out, only to let the judge let the man walk away, the criminal walk away.
yeah. They're taking away their fund. At least in Vancouver here, they're taking away the police funding and the powers that they can do to control the crime. Um, are you familiar? You're familiar with East Hastings, I imagine, right? The
Oh
famous.
yes, oh yes.
Yeah. So I drive through that street every day for work. It's not gotten better in the years. It's just getting worse and worse and worse. The questions we always get from people is what's called, why can't we just arrest them? Why are we letting the crime loose? Why are we allowing this to happen? And they're blaming the police, but the police, all they can do is shrug their shoulders because they've lost the power to control it. I guarantee you, everybody in that VPD would love to clean up those streets right now, tomorrow, and make Vancouver a safe place again. But they can't because we got the mayor and the judges that are tying them up. They make more money off letting these poor people die on the street and take more fentanyl that's coming in from across the border.
Well, yes, and they're allowing, and there's all these super labs that are getting busted in BC because they've decriminalized it, and you can pretty much get any hard drug that you want, and it's not
Yeah,
only staying in BC, but it's going to every part of Canada, and it's also going across the border of the United States. And
yeah,
so they know that you're going to get way less time in jail for crimes like that here in Canada than the United States. So why would they go into the United States when they can just make it here and then send it
yeah,
across the border?
exactly. And our border control is so weak in general. It makes sense. If you're a high profile criminal, why wouldn't you? Canada's just become a joke of itself lately.
Yes, and then when you look at for example, the out of control spending, right? Like you have,
Yeah,
like the government is just writing checks. They're talking about, oh well, we had job growth. Well, where did that most of that job growth occur? The
the
federal
federal. Yeah,
government. So you're getting an inflated bureaucracy, and you're getting people
mhm,
who are dependent on the government because the economy is going down, and they're going to do whatever the government tells them to do because they need to have bread. Canada is
yeah.
on the verge of becoming bankrupt, like completely. We're like a third
Yeah.
world country.
That's why
Like,
the 51st state wouldn't be a bad idea. It would save it at that rate if it's going to
Yeah.
go that route. So, and
And
Trump makes a good point when he says that. And I'm not saying anybody should support it, but you got to look at the facts. Like they were, what is it? We're at 1.3 trillion already with our fiscal deficit now. I don't see how.
yeah,
Yeah.
they give us so
So,
much money just to survive as a country every year. It's like they
yeah,
might like we cannot even sustain ourselves at this point. We might as well become the 51st state. Like we don't even have
yeah,
yeah, and the fact that Canada is literally committing treasonous acts by allowing Canada to be the station ground for Chinese and other people to come across and commit acts against the United States. It's like, okay, now it's a very different issue. It's not about feelings. It's about the fact that this is a serious national security threat for the entire world at this point. We're like, it's really
it's
messed
the
up.
The unfortunate thing I noticed over time is when I was, for example, growing up in the States, I remember Canada was always looked at as the nice people country. Everybody's just undyingly nice up here. And we have the best healthcare system. It's like free hospitals visits and all
What
this
a
jazz.
joke.
And I bought into it in high school because I didn't know much. I moved away when I was 5, and then I moved back when I was in my late teens. So I believe that, and then I get here and I'm like, holy heck, that it's not the way it is already off the bat, and that's only just gotten worse. And the
Yeah.
problem is they bring in Canadians love the I notice Canadians love being that having that image of themselves that we are the nicest people in the world, and because of that, there were the Liberal government and those powers that be took advantage of that with diversity of and inclusion and
Yeah.
allowed the country to go into this mess that it is in currently with the immigration flood in, the housing, jobs, you name it.
Yeah, like I
Yeah.
mean, the and the conservative government, they actually opened the door for Trudeau to come in anyway. Like I mean, you're looking at a lot of these guys being the two sides of the same coin, because when
Mhm.
Trudeau came in, there was only one thing that got my attention, because I know he's completely horrible. But that Bill C-51, the Anti-Terrorism Act that Stephen Harper put in, that was the
Yeah.
worst piece of legislation ever. This was what they were using against the guys at Coots and everything else like this. And this is where they, and then it's like
Mhm.
Canada's version of the Patriot Act. And this is where they're allowing um, all of this surveillance on people that without warrant and
Mhm.
unlawfully, is because
Yeah.
of like complete violations of that piece of
Yeah.
legislation.
It's what helps. Yeah.
Yes, and now then Trudeau comes in and promises to strike down that legislation, which was bad, but he never did, and in fact used it against his political enemies and drove the economy into the ground. We were on par with the United States for GDP per
Mhm.
capita. Now,
There was a time where a dollar was dollar to dollar too, not too long
yes,
ago.
and now we are poorer. The entire country is poorer than the poorest state in the United States.
Yeah, I saw that. We
Alberta
live in a
and
fun.
I know Alberta and Ontario are both poorer than Mississippi.
And
I,
where does that all problem? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
oh, that's just disgusting.
It is. And you know what? At the end of the day, I believe Polyev is actually just like Harper, in a sense. The only difference is because of Trump and the way social populism has gotten people's attention to politics. He's going to have to play his game a little differently. Because I do remember up until 10 years or so ago, nobody really cared about politics. Nobody paid attention to the bills, legislature that was passed, as long as the status quo of life was continuing to go in Canada. Um, Now, because of COVID, everybody's paying attention, and because of the, I dare say, the trans issue, all the parents are also paying attention. So Poilievre's going to have to, he's going to have to mice his words quite like artistically in order to get what he wants passed. But he's going to be no different than Harper or Justin Trudeau. He's not going to fix anything,
We
but he knows how to make it sound like he is.
well, and this is what we're tired of, because I'm tired of hearing people blow smoke up my hind parts. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, people can say whatever they want, but they don't really do anything. It's like we have here in Alberta, Danielle Smith. Everybody loves Danielle Smith, but when you look at what Danielle Smith's doing, she goes and hires Harper to
Mm-hmm.
run money like that belongs to the taxpayers in Alberta, when this guy is in bed with he has a company called Oz that is run by people there's Mike General Michael Day, who was like the Joint Task Force 2. You had a general that was running Unit 8200, who deals with cyber crimes, like cyber attacks and that kind of stuff. You have a former director of CSIS, a former director of MI5, a former director of the CIA, and a former deputy director of the FBI, and a former director of the Mossad, all on staff with this guy. And then you're giving that guy control of the money. You fire the entire board, and you have a
Mm-hmm.
minister running that, and you're going to have them oversee the building of AI. in Alberta, data centers? Are you on drugs?
Yeah,
That's why.
yeah,
That's also why the Trump oversight for Canada, I think, just makes sense. Like on every level, we're showing that we're incompetent at this point to even like
mhm,
handle things adequately. And how can they adhere to anything that Trump administration even requested for them to keep ensure the
yeah,
safety of Americans and Canadians when they're doing things like that?
yeah.
That like at the highest levels of government, like that they're doing things like that. Like that is not that level of incompetence at that level of
It's not
government is just
incompetence.
well,
Yeah.
that's the point. That's the point. That's the point. It's
Mhm.
like, oh
This
Well,
is
man.
I'll tell you.
go
Sorry,
ahead.
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I'll tell you this whole thing that Trump's doing. I'll tell you who this whole propaganda is working on in Canada right now is the unfortunately it's the older generation, because I know a lot of younger people like under 40 they don't buy this whole Canada first thing now all of a sudden because of this tariff push he's trying to do, because as in that age group, what are we getting from this country? We can't afford a home the same way our parents could. So
No.
it's right. So all this patriotism is coming from one demographic, in my opinion, and at the same time, like you said, Kaysha, is that there's a reason behind all of this, and that Trump is just trying to point that out to us. But of course, they're falling for the propaganda machine, and let's just say, oh no, Canada first, America sucks, and we're just as good as anybody else. But facts don't lie.
Yeah,
Well,
no.
and anybody can say Canada first, but what do your actions say? Right?
Yeah,
Like when
Exactly.
you destroyed you took one of the strongest economies on planet Earth and you
yeah,
drove it into the ground
In
in
a few years,
less than 10 years.
10 years. Like,
and
So
I've been as a realtor, I'm even seeing it in the housing prices in the last 5 years. I can't. Of course, Vancouver is one of the greatest areas to buy real estate in Canada, if you ask me. But the price is just so outrageous. Like, how do you expect anybody to make a living off this? Like, something. It's not
yeah.
fair. It's not right. And you look at
And
cities like, and I'm sorry, man.
oh no, go ahead, go ahead.
And you look at cities like even in down in the states, and it's half the price of what they're paying for
Yep.
here,
y- y-
right?
And
And why is that?
honestly, if you look at the if you look at like college and stuff like that, why a lot of people are now choosing to opt out of college, aside from the fact that the government does not even prioritize the best interest of its citizens, they can't even afford to go and do that. All of the immigrants, a lot of the immigrants that come over from overseas got bank. And then on top of it, like the government is actually paying a lot of these people to come over and do things. So it's like they are prioritizing making sure that the immigrants that come into society get ahead of the regular citizens while punching the citizens, stomping them into the ground. It's like we're in a dumpster fire.
yes,
Oh, totally.
just hold that thought because I just want to take a commercial break and we'll be back in a moment.
I'm excited to announce that we're having our first ever mega sale on overstock clearance and brand new products. For example, save over 50% on this season's flannel sheets. Queen size only $59.98. Kings only $69.98. They sell out fast every year, so order now. Save 20% on our brand new My Crosses. They're designed in the likeness of the one I've worn every day for over 20 years. They come in men's and women's, and they're made right here in the USA. Get our 2025 six-piece My Towel sets for only $29.98. Our initial quantities are extremely low, so get them now before they go. And our best-selling standard My Pillows, just $14.98. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use this promo code to take advantage of our first ever mega sale. But wait, remember that $75 free shipping rule? Well, that ship is sailed because right now, every order ships absolutely free.
Yes, and to our audience in
Oh.
Canada, it ships also to Canada, so you can get all the My Pillow stuff right there. You can see it, mypillow.com/Karis, or call 1-800-845-2942 and use the promo code Karis, and you can get some good stuff from Mike Lindell that's not made in China. Right? So, I mean, at the end of the day, we need to get back to common sense politics, because we can't go back with the status quo. You can't, right? Like, this is insanity. And Christopher Freeland, who made all this money, went away. Like, fiscal responsibility. What would the PPC do? Sorry, I'll digress. You can answer, make your comment, but then ask what would they do with the fiscal policies to straighten stuff out they had
Well,
the government.
The PPC platform states that we could fix the budget within a year, and a lot of that actually just starts with having cuts in the government. And I can name two off the bat would be foreign aid, right? That's one of them, because we're sending all this money to Ukraine still, and Polyev and Justin Trudeau still support it. And the CBC News, how much money is the Liberal government giving them? That would already save the government a ton of money right now, the federal government, I mean. When it comes to fixing the budget, essentially, is that the Liberals have messed this up so badly that they've spent money, printed money, and just keep spending, spending, spending. They don't think about cutting. Polyev's talking about making cuts, but the PPC is the only one that'll do the actual cuts. For example, we can even look at climate change. I know that's a touchy subject here in Canada, and that's why Polyev's only talking about axing the carbon tax. But we have a lot of other climate taxes that we are being taxed off of that I don't believe we deserve to be. For example, we're in the
Yeah.
Paris Climate Accord. Why? It makes zero sense to me. Canada is probably one of the least or best countries when it comes to making the environment safe. So we're wasting all this money on the climate accords, and Trump is right to get out of it, and we should do the same. Let Europe handle itself. And there's also a plethora of corporate welfare that we can cut, that the government is funding. It's just all comes down to cutting, and the government's not willing to do that. And once you see that, the budget will start to fix. Argentina is a good example of that.
Yeah, wanted to say something as well. Like, I mean, like, I'm a mechanical engineering technologist, and I got a bachelor degree as well. And in school, we had to look at some of the modeling that they used to basically do the climate change modeling, and it's very terrible. Like, they use a very small percentage of the earth, and then they try to extrapolate, and extrapolation is extremely difficult, and it's very inaccurate. And so for them, for what they're using to try to justify these things, it's nonsense. It's really nonsense. They don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, and they're going to raise the carbon tax again in April. So it's going up to, I think, 95%. So April 1st. So
what we're watching,
and everybody knows.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Most people, I think, know deep down that this whole climate thing is a bit of a scam. And I'm not saying climate change isn't real, but the money we're spending on it is a scam. If you want to figure out a way to launder money, I mean, do it through climate change. Trust me.
Yeah, it's like, how is giving all this money to climate change going to stop the environment from heating up? If that's the case of what they're really saying, how is the heat going to go down and get less hot if we have all this money? Like, there's so much things about it that just is not. And Canadians are freezing more than ever the last couple of years, so it's like their winter has not been less severe. I don't know. Like, I agree that we need to take care of the planet. I'm a Christian, and God says to take care of his planet and the animals and humans and things like that. But what they're doing is a complete scam, 100%.
It is. That's how you launder money. You just come up with like a fake villain that's going to destroy everything, and then you convince the masses that if you don't put in some moolah, then we're all going to die. And as far as you've seen so many of these like videos that show how many times did we hear everything's going to melt by X amount of years, right? Every year we seem to be breaking that bubble. And the way I see it is, like, if the Earth wants us gone, it'll do it itself. We have no control over that. And at the end of the day, we should just live our lives to the fullest. And the best way to do that is to stop wasting your money on stuff that doesn't matter.
Well, and I think that, sure, we should all be responsible, because you wouldn't go and use the bathroom in your own backyard and just leave it
Mhm.
there, right? Like that doesn't make sense. So you want to take care of what you want to be
Yeah,
responsible. And there's nothing wrong
yeah,
with that. But
Yeah.
if you don't have something that's going to effectively replace this without
Yeah.
giving a
mhm,
bunch of money, because when I look at some of these things, they have extremely low efficiencies and extremely high costs, and it doesn't
Yeah.
mhm,
justify getting away from, like, no matter what you do, you're never going to get away with what they call fossil fuels, or the
yeah,
getting away completely from coal, because how are you going to make steel and all these different things, right? Like,
mhm,
and so we have to be rational and take a common sense approach to doing these things, and the government should not be subsidizing these things. That corporate welfare needs to go away
Yeah.
yeah.
100%.
This is the thing that I was talking about earlier too, is because Canadians love image of we're being the heroes of the world or the nicest people in the world. It's hard to accept that fact that they don't want to not do climate awareness or climate style of they don't want to be non-climate. That's what I find people here don't like that image as a Canadian. But the fortunate thing is, like you said, it's the money's not being put towards that.
But
Well, you can.
I'll go ahead, Keisha.
Oh, okay. You can care about the environment and still use common sense. Like we're like saying
Mm,
how to do things more efficiently doesn't mean that you're all of a sudden gonna start trashing the environment. And most Canadians, when you ask them what they do to help with climate change. I mean, maybe we recycle, but other than recycling, how many of them are not? People will still
well,
litter. They will. It's like we have a Stockholm syndrome in Canada, I think, in a lot of ways, because there's
everything's so
like we as people, the Canadian people, I think, are very polite. I think they're very nice, but the government is very awful. And a lot of the
mhm,
things that they've been pushing Canadians to do as a solution is not the solution, and they need to wake up to the reality that they've been lied to, and the things that they're used to doing is actually causing more problems. They need to start
yeah,
looking at different things, because the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a
yeah,
different result, and that's what we're seeing. And it has nothing to do with being nice or not. Sometimes you have to hurt people's feelings and to get further along the way, because you can't be you have to be reasonable. I'm not It's like you can't. If a doctor is like, okay, someone's dying, I don't want to tell them this because the family's going to be sad. It's like, no, I have to tell them so I can fix it. It's
mhm.
You know what I mean.
I wouldn't. Yeah, I would invite a lot of people to go visit a dump. I've done it myself, just to see what they're doing. So in Canada, at least myself, I got a normal trash bin, recycling, and compost. Right, I have to separate everything in three ways. I go to a dump, they're dumping all three of them into one large bin, and then setting it on fire. So I'm not lying. You go over to any dump in any city, I'll tell you right now, they are not separating anything over there. It's so that made me question, why the heck am I doing
Recycling.
separating recycling and compost, and then they're also claiming this is saving the environment when you're burning it at the dump and it's just the smoke's going into the air. I'm not a scientist, but I don't know if that's good with all the plastics in there. So, but yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
This is exactly why I don't agree with any climate deals that Canada is currently in, and people are brainwashed to think that we're
Yep.
fixing the world. We're not. The
We're
first thing we
not.
should do is the Paris Climate Accords and just cancel all climate taxes, and I guarantee you, every Canadian will notice a difference in their wallet right away.
Yes, I agree. We need to shut those things down. They have to be dealt with. I think that they do need a private organizations to come in and audit the government. And they
Mhm,
definitely need people with a background in engineering or engineering technologists to do this,
Yeah.
because engineering is one of the leading sources of money laundering, because people don't understand it. And when you're
mhm,
doing the construction costs, they end up inflating things in a lot of ways so that they can help put away money. And there was, a lot of that stuff going on. But I want to kind
yeah,
of roll into about the stuff with the parents and the gender ideology and the women's, I mean, men in women's sports type of thing. What would you be doing in your areas about that?
Well, I mean, I think I'd do the most common sense thing, is I'd keep men out of women's bathrooms. I'd get away this whole gender neutral bathroom ideology, keep women out of men's sports. As much as Vancouverites here would love to think it's very inclusive to do stuff like that, you're actually taking away, as we all know, we're taking away opportunities from women when men enter women's sports. And I would also take away the whole just teaching children this nonsense about genderism. There's no, as far as I'm concerned, there's no such thing as gender. It's just male or female. It's biology. You can't. You're just going to confuse kids. I used to, I wore my mom's heels when I was 5 to walk around to be all fun. That didn't mean that she didn't put a dress on me and tell me, "Oh, that means you're a woman." She, of course, she thought it was cute. Tell me, "Okay, but you're a boy. Like, don't, you're never going to be wearing this." And I knew this deep down. I played with action figures like any other boy, but come on, we're kids. We just want to have fun. And I think the problem is these teachers they know this and they're taking advantage of it. So I would immediately shut down all. I think it's labeled soji.
Yes.
I always
So, yeah.
yeah, the LGBTQXYZ, whatever, all this like letters coming together. I would get rid of all this and just take it out of the schools because it's ideology. It's not teaching anything.
So I have just a spin-off question from that, because you know what, I actually saw the other day, a little girl, the father had put her in co-ed wrestling, and she was like elementary or something. She was quite small, and I was like, no, this also needs to stop. There's a lot of young co-ed sports, and people think that because little girls and little boys have similar strength
Mhm.
at such a small age that it's fine, but that's a part of the grooming mentality, because as you go through that co-ed stuff at such a young age, girls get this warped idea that, oh well, I can beat up guys, I could be just as strong with them, and then they continue down that, and then they're getting punched in the face and knocked out in the ring. And everyone, like, this is kind of how it starts. I think the co-ed stuff need to be completely cut,
Totally,
like from elementary all the way up, because it's grooming.
yeah.
And the girls, they're just going to be set up to get beaten up 24/7. Like, let's be
It,
real. When they're in elementary, it's like almost equivalent, but as soon as you hit middle school, man, yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, and look, biologically, there are differences between men and women. We can't deny this. It's in
Yeah.
our brains and in our bodies. Like we have to understand that. We
Yes.
can't convince somebody that that's not the case. And when I see a child that's already trying to tell me they're something they're not, I'm not going to cater to that and tell them and make them feel better. I'm assuming there's something wrong. Are they depressed? There's
Yeah.
something about yourself that you hate. And I don't like that. You need to love yourself. We should all love ourselves. We're perfect and created in God's image. So don't cut anything off, or don't assume that it's there's something wrong with you, because that's never the case.
well,
I
seeing
actually appreciate. Oh, I'm sorry. I just want to say really quick. I actually also appreciate that you said that there is a mental and a physical difference, because a lot of people think the difference is just physical between men and women. But my dad and I are also always telling people, no, it's a brain and physical different,
Yeah,
body
yeah.
difference. So, anyways, go ahead, Dad.
Women are
well,
more nurturing. I don't know. Look at my fiance; she's more nurturing than I am in regards to things, like more understanding of certain realities. And men are we're just harder in understanding certain focal points because we're built different. Nothing
that,
wrong with that.
that it's exactly it. And there's differences in the way that we think and experience the
Yeah.
world, because women are more emotional. They're more in tune because they have to read the emotions of a baby that doesn't talk to nurture and take care of it, where
Mhm.
we don't have to do that because we're the one that's supposed to make sure that those guys are safe while she's tending them in an invulnerable state. And so
Yeah,
we're wired differently to provide those different roles that are essential to
yeah,
making more children, because if we don't make children, and we're not, like, people don't realize parents are the most important roles on planet Earth. Mother number one,
hmm,
father number two. Because if
yeah,
we don't make more of ourselves, we're all dead. No more human beings, right? So
right,
reproducing is the most important thing for us as human beings, for our
yeah,
species to survive. And
yeah,
everything comes secondary from that. And so we need to protect that, protect the families, protect this nonsense of what's going on with trying to blur all of this, because
mhm,
you're setting a dangerous precedent, and this is how you destroy countries.
I've noticed this actually when I was growing up as well, even in California, and I think it's all been planned ever since there. The biggest turning point the first thing that started all this, in my opinion, was when this new wave feminism started convincing women that being an independent working career woman is better than being a stay-at-home mom, and that being a stay-at-home mom is like the worst thing you could do in your world. It's not rewarding at all. You're just at home and your wife beats you, your husband beats you, and all, etc. So that's where I think it started, and then from there it started to evolve into like, oh, now let's accept certain people who identify as gay or lesbian, and then it evolved from there into like, oh, they want to identify as a tractor, that's fine, and then the kids get involved, and now as soon as kids get involved, they're surprised there's a boundary being crossed, line being drawn with people, and now they're trying to play victim.
Yes.
And that's the thing is, sorry,
go ahead. No, finish what you're saying.
I think that's the thing with conservatism that I like, is that it looks at life in the way it's supposed to be. It's not the wrong. I think being a mother is probably the best thing in the world. Like the best feeling, the best, like I'm not a mother obviously, but it's most likely the best feeling and like achievement one could come do in this world, because you're creating another human being. It's not the way they just toned that down and just made women think that getting a job like a man should be the equal, like should be the way to achieve, is, I think, was wrong. And and we all know it became like there was other multiple reasons why this happened, but I think we need to get back to our roots. If we can, I guarantee if we were to change the schooling system and take away all this like trans stuff, a lot of girls would end up being girls again, and boys would be boys. And men need to learn how to be men again. That's the other thing.
Yes. Like when I listen to him say, "Oh, well, they can't go through this because it's too painful," I'm like, no, men need that.
Yeah, they need it.
The things that will crush a woman is what men need to develop into being men. We need to have hard challenges, and we need to overcome a lot of adversity so that we can face ourselves for the world out there, because that's our primary role, is to keep those threats outside, away from our families. Right?
Yeah. And this is
it's
why
easy for. Oh, go ahead.
I think because the liberals are able to, because they've weakened men's mental state so much in the last 20 years, the women end up kind of running the household a little bit more, and the liberals are able to get into the women's heads with their policies and their speech, because women are more emotional and nurturing in general. So, and if liberals cater to that, and that's why we're having this issue with men currently who don't agree with the conservative values because their wife doesn't.
Yes. And that's what I was going to say. Like, that's what I was going to touch on. It's really easy to get women to do a lot of these things because they try to make women feel bad about doing what's most natural to women. Like, I remember when I was growing up, they're like, oh, you can't be a woman that stays at home or be a mom because you have to work, because then you're lazy. No man will ever want you. Like in school, I know so many girls who went to college to get a degree just so that they could get a potential husband. Like so many women were just like, I have to do this or else no one will marry me. And that's completely opposite. So it's like, it's easy to make women believe these things because if you tell them that they'll not have what their heart desires, then they will do it because they're afraid of the rejection, of feeling bad, people looking at them poorly, because we're more nurturing and more loving. And then by the time they're ready to settle down and actually get that, it's too late. Like, and as someone who's accomplished so many different feats in my life, like I feel people tell me all the time, I've lived like 10 different like lifetimes of life in my short span of life of 27 years of age. The only thing that I want is to have children. Like nothing is fulfilling to me as a woman because all I can think about is I want a family. And I think that's why a lot of women are running around society crazy, like psychotic, because we're trying to find fulfillment in things that's not natural to us as women.
Yeah, and that's why a lot of this trans issue is starting. Unfortunately, women are pushing it and also suffering from it, I think. Because a lot of that emotional, like, this person wants to be feels like there's something else and they're depressed because they're not, a woman's more likely to cater to that to make them feel better. So problem is they
Yes.
infiltrate your schools, your sports, your hospitals, your bathrooms, locker rooms, and all that. And then, here we are. And Trump at
Yep.
least finally reversed that, which
Yep.
we already know. Trudeau. The Liberals will not. Poilievre won't.
No.
He's pro-trans
No.
agenda as well. I won't even bother with the NDP or the Greens. So why would you vote for any of these parties if that's the case? You're just going to get more of the same.
Well,
Exactly.
and this is what I'm going to sit down and say. We got to wrap up here right away. We need to make sure that we make common sense policies. We have to protect our
Yeah.
families. Families are the building blocks of the churches
Yes.
and the community and the nation. And if you don't have strong families, you don't have anything. And when you look at these
Right.
ideology and the trans ideology, what they're using, they're not protecting anyone. They're destroying the family. They're abusing children. They're confusing them by giving them ideas that adults get them to parrot because kids have no idea about sexuality until they're older. It's
Yeah.
beyond their comprehension,
It's,
and
yeah.
they're pushing something that is destroying our country. And we have
Well,
to
another
stop
thing,
it. Go
Chris,
ahead.
sorry to interrupt you there. I just one thing to also add on to that, what I would do in the school system, at least in Vancouver, is I would actually take away sexual education from schools. I'd leave it to
Yeah.
the parent.
Yeah.
That's the
I
ever
agree
since
with
this
that.
plan. Yeah, ever since this sexual education, I believe it started in the '80s is when they started bringing it into the schools, and the plan was intentionally was to make kids stop having sex less. What it did instead was it increased sexual activity
Increased
amongst
it.
young children. So,
Yes.
and we've all, like, if
Yes.
you're young enough like me, we've been in these classes where they showed us these stupid images and told us about abstinence and all that. I didn't even know any of this, what it was. Why couldn't my parents just talk to me about it? Why is it the school's responsibility?
It's
Yeah.
not.
And you know what? They're saying, sociologists in Canada say, and social workers say, that the earliest a child engages in sexual activity is elementary. And that's ever since all of
Mm,
this. Because of
That's
course you're going to
disgusting.
show kids Spider-Man flipping off of buildings, they're going to be jumping off the couch. The same thing with sexual videos in school. So, yep, I
Yeah,
agree with that, my friend.
yeah,
So
it should.
before we close here, what do you want to tell people? How can they reach you? How can they help you?
Yeah, so you can reach me on my social pages. Just type in Chris Varga, that's V as in Victor's, Chris Varga PPC, and my Instagram or Twitter. You can find my website on the People's Party of Canada candidate section as well. Just type in my name. And essentially, all I'm saying for people in Vancouver and Canada nationwide is that don't vote for a party that's not going to protect its Canadian citizens first, because every other party aside from the PPC does not care about you as much as they like to say that they do. They don't. I guarantee you, if it's Parney, Polyev, nothing's going to change. Our borders will not be closed. Housing will still be expensive, and jobs will still be scarce. And our young people will suffer. Our older people will, as time goes on, as they pass away, they will lose their homes that they will not be able to give to their kids, and our kids will be leaving this country, and we will just be a country full of foreigners. So I really encourage people to just open their eyes. I know we're a fringe party, but at the end of the day, you have to start somewhere. If you look at countries like England, Germany, Argentina, it is possible. It just takes time and patience, and we can get there.
All right, thank you for coming. I'm going to close here with a prayer and give my daughter final thoughts. For the other broadcasters in the United States, give some of these PPC people the same kind of attention because the Canada First policies are very similar to the America First policies, and you want to have a government that is friendly towards you, not one that is hostile. And so I'll close here with a prayer. Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for your love, grace, and mercy. Lord, we thank you the work that Chris is doing to help his community and others like him and help the men and women to come together to rebuild their families, their churches, their community, and the nation, to most importantly protect the children and to have some peace and prosperity for the children. Until your work is done, we see you coming in the clouds is my prayer. In Jesus' name, amen.
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 Thanks, Dad, for the prayer. As always, thank you, Sir Chris, for joining us today. It was very awesome having you on. Hope to have you on in the future with some updates. guys, thank you for your time and considerations and listening today. I really look forward to the progression of this party. I'm really hoping that not only in America, but in Canada, with the change in people that will be going into government, and hopefully will be able to continue to get into government, good, patriotic people, that family can be restored and that people can go back to a sense of unity within their families, that women can go back to being women, men can go back to being men, and that the circumstances will be created so that the men will actually be rewarded for going out and being men in society, and women will be rewarded for staying home and being mothers and wives in society, so that the children especially can get the full protection and provisions that they need for growth and everything else. So anyways, thank you guys for your time and consideration. We'll check you in the next one. And to my dearest Karis and to Amelia, my friend, and we will ciao.